Promotion of Mercedes Junior Andrea Kimi Antonelli to F2 is the biggest junior single-seater move in years. Such is the hype around the 17-year-old Italian who's been filling up the trophy shelves with titles across karting and junior single-seaters for years now that any decision regarding his career takes place firmly in the spotlight, especially a decision like taking up a top-notch Prema seat in F1's main feeder series. But it's not just that. Antonelli heading to F2 is the biggest junior bombshell, at least since Lance Stroll jumped from European F3 to Williams. And with all due respect to Stroll's perfectly credible record in junior single-seaters, Antonelli's promotion to F2 feels like a more seismic moment since Max Verstappen was promoted to an F1 seat at 16. It's not the same situation. Verstappen had really been in junior single-seaters for less than 1 year. Antonelli's wrapping up year 3, but he's widely recognised as the next big thing, and like Verstappen and Stroll, he is hop-stepping it up in a big way. He's arriving straight to F2 from Freca. In doing so, Kimi is doing something that almost everyone does, and that's skip F3, which usually marks an F1 hopeful's first entry onto the Grand Prix support ticket these days. Each kid is different, said Mercedes driver development advisor Gwen Large, and each driver requires a specific approach and a specific project. What works for one might not work for the other, and we'll do what is right for Kimi, because Kimi is a specific project. And yeah, when you look at it, the gaps between the two different cars are pretty seismic, and Antonelli popped up in 2017 in karting, and he's soon signed to a deal with Mercedes after. On the year before this bombshell move, a different leap, and he passed up Antonelli not being fast-tracked to F3 despite a sumptuous first full season F4 in which he's handily won Italian F4 and dominated German F4 in its final season for good measure. Helped top him at the top of the FIA's motorsport games by coming out on top in F4 part of the event. For me, it's not a rash, said Large. The question is what are you doing to prepare them for the best, and definitely the step from F4 to F3 is not the right one. I think when you're 15, 16, you need track time, you need consistent tyres when you're doing quali, you need practice. That is also what we are finding in Freca, and I think that it's a normal step from F4 that, in my opinion, and this is what we're doing. And when I see the last F3 champions, I think it confirms that coming from the Freca is the right step before F3, because all of the last ones came from Freca, or because Euro Cup Formula Renault. So I haven't seen this one coming from F4 smashing it straight away. It's pretty accurate observation. F3 is naturally mileage limited due to its place on the F1 support calendar, and its championships do usually come from Freca. Since the adoption of the current moniker after the merger of GP3 and European F3, 4 of the 5 champions, Schwartzman, Piastri, Martins and Bortoleto, have come from Freca or Euro Cup. Dennis Hauger, freshly released from Red Bull, is the exception, having come from F4, but he needed 2 seasons to take the title, and it was a pretty muted one at that. This one is an exception. With Ferrari's Ollie Behrman, but he's probably a bit apart as a driver and a kid, and he still didn't win, said Large. He fought it and he was consistent, but it was also a specific reason. So for me, we were feeling for Kimi after F4, despite the fact he was dominating F4, it's still the right step was Freca. He needed to grow up and still to develop the maturity before going to the pro level. Antonelli isn't finished yet, though. And yeah, that's emphasised repeatedly. The season was no walkover for the Wonder Kid. Antonelli taking until race 8 of the campaign to win, which was also the race in which a dark shadow was cast over the season after the fatal accident of Delano van 't Hoff. In terms of the title fight, this was a very stern challenge from Martinez Shechahon and Tim Dritz, who was snapped up by Red Bull from F4, was in the picture too, though Antonelli did ultimately gather momentum to seal the title with a round to spare. But as Hockenheim showed, he still has something to fight for, with his Prema team needing to ensure it sealed the team's title. And when Antonelli took pole for one of the races but lost it to a yellow flag impingement, Large wasn't impressed. It could have eventually cost the team the title, he says, and this is what mistakes do in junior series, but we cannot repeat it at a higher level. Blunt maybe, but the role is to build a professional project and be truthful. Yeah, and perhaps this is a big part of why Mercedes feel comfortable having Antonelli in F2 this year. It's the confidence in that kind of approach. The length of time they've worked together, even though his age. But yeah, you can tell that there's a good relationship there. And that's probably the reason why. So while it's not quite a vintage Antonelli weekend in the end, it did not cost Prema the title. In a nail-biter final race, Antonelli shuffled back in the early bit of avoidable contact, making key overtakes, including a last lap move on Nikal Borat. This was, in fact, the difference between Prema winning and Prema losing. The move to F2 is surprising because Antonelli, while very fast and clearly living up to expectations in Freca, wasn't miles above rivals. In many ways, his current path has now mirrored one star in particular, Lando Norris, who was also a karting champion when he went to F4, then reigned supreme in Formula Regionals, predecessor Formula Renault. In fact, just as Norris won a double of Formula Renault titles, he as now Antonelli has with Freca. But Norris' next step was European F3, which you'd also win. F2 was still another year away. It's still a different maker, however. The F2 car is bringing in focused on steering efforts, but also changes to improve the already good racing and bring it closer to F1 in terms of design philosophies. And if Antonelli is ready, why not capitalise and accelerate the path of F1, which looks likely. The flip side of that being the obvious demand of the big step and the fact that the mileage concern are playing a big part in passing F3, and they apply to F2 as well. And Antonelli will be in the spotlight. He is, after all, considerably more famous than the champions at that level tend to get, and that's because he's been racing between F1 sessions every other Grand Prix weekend. But that's part of the job in this large, and it goes without saying you have to accept it. He's growing up more in this right direction. He's ticking the boxes, and his success is also making him a little bit more attractive, and you have to deal with that. But we're accepting that quite easily because it means that he goes straight to the direction, so it's part of the game. A big task is awaiting Antonelli, and yeah, the huge jump. What expectations will be questionable, and on the other side, those who are handling his career, it does feel something out of the Red Bull playbook, though it's worth noting Antonelli will be under a month older when he makes his F2 debut than Verstappen was lining up for the 2015 Australian Grand Prix, but there were special circumstances then, and clearly there are now. At the same time, previous work and with George Russell, etc., shows that Mercedes are good with this kind of approach, and yeah, whether he can deliver an F2 or not is going to be very interesting, but there is excitement for possibly the next Verstappen coming through the FAQ. But anyway, guys, that's it for you. Thanks so much for watching. Next, subscribe for daily F1 news and subscribe to the channel. It's really appreciated. Thanks so much for watching. Peace out.